Everybody,
Good morning.
have we started our recording? Right. Welcome to the Governance and Audit Committee of Breckland Council. Today, the 7th of December. This meeting is being recorded. I'd ask members when they speak to please turn on your microphone. That way also the cameras will pick you up. But most importantly, when you finish, could you turn it off again, because that will allow the next person to speak. I would like to welcome Teresa Sharman, our new Head of Internal Audit, to her first meeting. You're very welcome. And I see that we have one non-member of the committee who is here, Councillor Attewell. You're very welcome too. So if we can move on to item 1, minutes of the meeting held on the 28th of September 2023. Any comments for accuracy only? If there are none, are members of the committee happy that I sign as a true and accurate record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. There you go, Julie. Thank you. Okay, item 2, actions arising from the minutes. I have none. And item 3, apologies. Julie, do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have two apologies from Councillor Oliver and the Executive Member for Finance, Revenue and Benefits, Councillor Cowan, who have sent their apologies, and we have no substitutes in attendance.
Thank you. Alison.
Just to say that Matthew is on his way. He had a call with a minister that finished at 10, so he will be here with us shortly.
He makes him sound extremely important, so we await his arrival. Thank you. So that brings us to item 4, urgent business, and again I have none. So item 5, declarations of interest. Do any member of the committee have any interest they wish to declare that they haven't already got on their declaration? None? Okay. We've noted that we have Councillor Attewell in attendance. Item 6. Training, standing item. Does anybody have anything they wish to raise under this item?
Well, we have the Treasury Management online training scheduled.
Yeah.
Which is a 3-hour session, so...
That's imminently, isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
I don't know how many people have so far accepted that.
But any members of the committee, if you haven't been on it, I would recommend that you do attend. Well, okay, it's statutory. So then I definitely recommend that you attend if you haven't been on it. Any other items? Here we have Matthew. Lovely. Any other items under 7? No? Okay. So we move on to item 8, investment policy. Councillor Attewell raised this in the last full meeting of the the council. So I just thought we would have a chat to decide whether this is something that the committee is interested in or not. And whether we are happy, whether we want to investigate further. So, do we have an officer to give us a short verbal update on the current investment policy?
So, the investment policy that stands is the one that's agreed as part of the overall treasury management strategy, and that was agreed by yourselves and then by full council back in February this year. Our treasury management advisors are looking at environmental, social and governance issues in relation to investments, and they're doing a piece of work on that. And as part of the training, the treasury management training next week, I have asked them to outline some of the issues in relation to making investments and the considerations around ethical investing, bearing in mind that we're still needing to comply with other guidance and regulations in terms of treasury management, and having to ensure, importantly, security and liquidity and yield in terms of our investments. We still have those key principles that we have to adhere to when we're thinking about managing our investments.
Thank you. Any comments?
I think part of the context that it gets discussed is the local government pension fund, or the Norfolk local government pension fund, but we don't appear to have any direct control over their investment policy.
I have sat on the committee for the local government pension fund for Norfolk some years ago, admittedly, and the members of that are trustees of the fund and answerable to the beneficiaries of the fund and not to the members of the council. So it is not for the council to decide what the policy of the fund is. It is up to the trustees of the fund to decide what the policy of the fund is. And people misunderstand that, but ultimately it's very clear in statute that, and as we do not provide, I think all of the district councils across Norfolk nominate one person to represent the districts on the pension fund. And when I was on it, it was Councillor John Fuller from South Norfolk. So I think that is as far as the reach we have with the pension fund. Councillor Atwell, do you want to comment?
Thank you, Chairman. All I really wanted was to have that discussion and raise the point. As I think I alluded to in full council, I did write to the leader and Councillor Cowan and senior officers back in the summer regarding this, and I never got a reply, not one reply from anybody, which is why I raised it at the full council to try and sort of promote this idea that we perhaps need to look at these investments, particularly in light of events in the Middle East at the moment. I was just concerned about the investments with Abu Dhabi First Bank and the Qatar National Bank. They were the ones that I really had the issue with. I think Councillor Cowan has subsequently said that it's the advice that this council has got is that those banks are probably more secure than British banks. But when I'm looking at the credit ratings that you've got listed here in the meeting documents, that doesn't seem to bear that out. You know, Barclays, Goldman Sachs, they have equal to or better ratings than perhaps those banks do. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at. I would urge, you know, please, with our investment advisors to look at an ethical investment policy, because I think as a council, you know, we do some great work across a wide spectrum of different topics, but I think that we need to make sure that, and I think I mentioned the LGBTQ, we do a great work on that, promoting Pride Month, etc., that we also need to take account and make sure that everything that we do as a council is taking account of that good work, and because it just kind of smacked to me that we were paying lip service to it in the summer, but actually behind the scenes we are investing in countries that have a dubious record, according to the Foreign Office, in regard to, you know, rights for those people. So there was that, and I think overall, just to freshen up the investment policy, I would be pleased if you would consider having that review done and then report back perhaps to this committee at a later date when you've got that information. I do appreciate that you've got to maximise your yield, obviously for financial reasons, but I also think we need to take account of the ethical reasons as well. Thank you.
David and then Harry.
Just to say that it is quite common for local authorities to have ethical investment policies, and just to echo what Matthew said, I understand that Link have a ability to advise local authorities on how they can address that issue and remain compliant with SIPFA and other best practice. So it's not an unusual line to go down for local authorities.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it's very helpful, I think, for the council to have this conversation at least and echo what David Fowler has just said. Obviously, there will be constraints, I think, as you've alluded to, Chairman, around where we have no ability to influence areas such as pension funds area, which we are constrained by statute. It might be SIPFA guidance, etc., national guidance, etc. But certainly, if we do have particular aims as a council, for example, it might be that we've got things about net zero, reducing carbon footprint, fossil fuels. So we might, for example, wish to take a view, even if we weren't shareholders in a particular fund, about saying, well, we don't invest in this fossil fuel organisation because they're laying waste to the, to the Amazon. I appreciate, particularly in local government, there are, constraints on what we can and can't do, but it's certainly worthwhile having that conversation. I think that will also show to, residents and the wider public that, we do think about all these things and other issues like sustainability, net zero, the environment, food waste, and this is no different from that. So I'd welcome, further discussion and contribution on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yourself off. We do the we do the investment policy every year as part of our Treasury management, and that is approved, as I said to Councillor Attwell, in full council by all the members every year. So it is the members' policy. So given that it's looked at every year, I propose that we don't bring a special report here, but that the comments of the committee are noted in the production of the next Treasury management strategy. From my experience, we deposit money with organisations, but I'm not aware that we take strategic shareholdings in organisations in the way a pension fund would. So I think that I'd be very surprised if we were part owners of a company that was rapaciously pillaging the Amazon, as Councillor Clark alluded to. So would the committee be happy to agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Alison.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's a really good outcome. We'll look at that in the investment strategy when we bring it forward. And like Matthew said, we'll include in the training next week some of the issues that come across. But there are a couple of other things we also need to bear in mind when we do it. The Economic Activity of Public Bodies Bill, which sort of tries to prevent us from putting our own criteria in to disinvest in certain areas. And also it is quite difficult. So for example, Qatar Bank, which you mentioned, are a really large shareholder of Barclays. So, you could move to one bank, but inadvertently be still investing in other areas. So it's quite complex, but I think that would be a really good idea. We'll look at that when we bring it back.
Thank you. Councillor Wickerson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just be clear on the time frame of this? Will it be February of next year when this comes to council again? It's a matter of months rather than a longer period than that, because I do think it's important that it is on the table again, and with your guidance, the full council can make a decision as to whether we approve or otherwise. So it will be February. Yeah. Thank you.
As I say, it's an annual piece of work, and I'm quite content that the strategy agreed by the members last year is robust. I'm sure of that, because it was discussed at length in this very committee. Before we recommended it to full council. Okay, well, in that case, I'll move us on to item 9, the Q3 strategic risk report. And we're very honoured to have Cabinet Member Alison Webb with us. Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that as well. Much appreciated. Good morning, committee members. I'm pleased to bring the Q3 risk report to the Governance and Orders today to provide an overview of the Council's risk landscape. This has been a static period for the Council, with the overall risk scores changing minimally since the committee last saw them. However, despite these scores remaining stable, other changes have been made to the risks themselves through consultation with the corporate management team. The outcome of this risk review is detailed within the covering report, but can be best summarised as a broadening of the risks and what they cover. For example, has it gone off?
No.
Thank you. For example, one of the risks related to the delivery of our sustainability strategy. Sorry. Sorry. That's not working. I'm so sorry. Right, I'll sit here. Right, okay. For example, one of the risks relating to the delivery of our sustainability strategy, this has now been widened to give even more weight to the other priorities within our corporate plan. By doing this, we are able to better reflect the current challenges facing the organisation and allow for members to have greater oversight of our progress to deliver all of the priorities in the corporate plan. Can you all hear me all right?
I am extremely disappointed that we still got problems, because when we met some time ago, we had this problem. Is there absolutely no means of fixing this?
Can I just come back on that, Chairman?
Yeah.
The team are busy doing a study at the moment, looking at replacements, possibly upgrades to try and get this issue sorted. Obviously, we've got to try and make sure that it's not just the tow balloons, as we call them, it's the whole system, or maybe just the tow balloons on their own. So the system will get better. I'll sit here because obviously it's working a lot better. Sorry, Ryan.
No worries. I'm very lucky to have you with all your hats on there,
Yes,
Councillor Webb.
Thank you. By doing this, we are able to better reflect the current challenges facing the organisation and allow for members to have greater oversight of our progress to deliver all of the priorities in the corporate plan. In terms of the risks themselves, the scoring remains fairly static. This is not to say that progress has not been made against them, just enough to bring the scores down yet. As members of the committee will see, updates around national changes to waste and nutrient neutrality are progressing in a positive direction. In the case of the National Waste Consultation, enough information is now known about this, which will be brought in, so about when this will be brought in, so the Council will be able to reduce the score of this risk. In the case of nutrient neutrality, the Council continues to work towards a positive outcome with its partners and, similar to last quarter, wishes to wait for this to progress further before the score is taken down. Myself and Ryan are happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much for bearing with me.
Very much, Councillor Webb. Members of the committee. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm glad my Tobler Road, as some people allude to these, is working perfectly. As one member mentioned at full council, when I did have some feedback on mine, I think another member of the council suggested it was the amount of gold that I was wearing. I can't remember what that was, so I'm not wearing any today. Anyway, thank you very much for that report. I've looked at the Q3 report there, and obviously we've got some of those same things in there. On the area around housing, that's obviously focusing on temporary accommodation, because obviously the need for that, and looking at homelessness and the cost of the authority. And I know we've explored that at full council with question and debate, and also taking additional properties. There's another area which is partly out of our control, which is around disabled facilities grant, because we have those funds coming, direct from the government. Now that will have an impact on obviously the quality of the housing stock, and also how we relate to providers, as we don't own many of those, and we've got to go into those properties. So I understand that obviously the council is has put pressure on central government to change the methodology, which may help a bit. But although it's not reflected in this risk register, it is something that is creeping up the radar of quite a few of us, as councillors, because that funding is dependent on coming down from the government. And one of the issues there is that if you have a number of complex cases, they are going to eat up some of those funds. Allied to that also with what will be happening in the housing market, I think, is possibly looking at, although we've got an HMO policy which has been agreed, is looking at how far we're able to have enough capacity inspecting housing multiple occupation. So those are a couple of areas which I might flag up for. I'm not suggesting it absolutely, but to think about those and perhaps discuss with the housing team and executive director whether we need to flag that up as an area, of performance, even though it's dependent on government grants. The other issues around waste, which you've highlighted in the government's proposals coming out, has there been an assessment of or understanding whether, if we were to change anything around that on food waste, whether there would be any pump priming from central government, or that would be under our own resources, and whether there's an impact on our, financial position? Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So I'll go through those sort of one by one then. So DFGs and HMO inspections, I think there's absolutely a conversation we can have about that. I've got a meeting on Friday specifically around the reporting of the indicators for HMOs and DFGs, because at the moment in the performance reports we're doing, we're currently giving a verbal update to those rather than a numerical one. That's just due to some of the systems transition that we're going through. But it's totally valid to raise, because like we said, there's the demand aspect, there's the backlog aspect, there's the funding aspect, which I think would probably be covered under the policy national government change risk. The other one around waste consultation. So my understanding is we've got a clear idea of when that's now going to come in. We're aware there's probably going to be some burdens funding now. It's just understanding what that looks like, whether that's time sensitive. So would we get the funding before it comes in? Would we have to agree something afterwards? And that's being worked through with sort of the LGA and stuff like that. But I'll try and get some more clear details on that for when we're in the Q1 report, just in terms of dates and our understanding of the current burdens funding picture.
That's helpful, and I think perhaps when you're doing that further work, if there are any other authorities around the country where there have been pilots and where they've undertaken this in other councils, and they can say, well, this is how we did it, etc., and this was the impact, and best practice and way of implementing a change in both behaviour, but also of authorities as well, and whether there's a capital cost, etc. That'd be helpful. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. David.
I think Ryan's just kind of touched on the point I was going to make. On page 16, in terms of the housing services demand, under the indicators, the risk indicators and the control indicators, we've got a figure there of 338 cases in October. But it's not clear from this what the trajectory is. Is that an increase on from September? And is there a point at which the services can't cope? So just sort of some context of that trajectory would be helpful. And then on page 18, we've got indicators in there but no figures. Is that kind of what you were alluding to, that you need to get some numerical? So the monthly cost of accommodation not available. Monthly income of temporary accommodation not available. And the same again for the number of households in temporary accommodation. We've got a figure, but it's just a monthly figure, and kind of understanding the context of that. There's a very clear description of the serious nature of the pressures the services are under, but just to kind of understand that trajectory. And then briefly on page 22, staff training, I mean 93, 92% is great. Is there a kind of a date by which we're hoping to get everybody? And is there a risk? I mean, I don't know how that equates in terms of numbers of staff. I guess it's not very many won't be very many staff who haven't received that training, but is there a risk there? Have we got staff who are working who haven't had the appropriate training? That's the... And I think, final point, Chair, sorry, page 29. Oh yeah, I was just making the point, we haven't got risk indicators for every risk. Is there a reason for that, or is that something we're looking at? Thank you.
So I'll try and work through these before I get loads of feedback on the microphone. So in terms of the housing demand one, I do have the figures somewhere in our sort of data storage. I will get those and send those out after this. I believe what we're seeing is that compared to historic demand has gone up, but in terms of that monthly trend, I'm not 100%. Moving forwards with the key risk indicators and key control indicators, I'll start to put whether it's an increase or a decrease against them, because that makes sense for what you guys would like. In terms of why some have key risk indicators and some don't, that just sort of comes down to the appropriateness of the risk and stuff like that, essentially. So, for example, stuff like the national government changes, be very difficult to put a key risk indicator, key control indicator. So where possible, we are trying to put those in. Some of them don't fit, some of them do. That's just why some of them are missing it, some of them aren't. You had one more point, I can't remember.
Staff training.
Staff training, yes. So staff training has a target internally of 95%, I believe. Part of that is just to allow for a bit of flux of you've got some new starters coming in, some leaving. Obviously, when the training goes out, people have a set period to do it. It's something we have flagged with the team. It's been a new indicator. We introduced it in April, and I think we're aware that it's not quite working in terms of the methodology of it at the moment. So we'll be looking to tweak that probably over the next few months. In terms of the IT and cyber one, there's lots of work we're doing internally to drive that up, because I say it's a very key area in terms of the threats to us. And your last point was just around why some of the key risk indicators are blank and some of them are filled, essentially. So we introduced the key risk indicators and the key control indicators back in probably April now in terms of a change to the performance report. What we perhaps didn't anticipate when we did that was obviously this is the Q3 report. A lot of this data is from Q2 or older or stuff like that, and that's because we won't receive the Q3 data until the end of the quarter. So we need to look at how we're doing that and fixing that, essentially. Some of the stuff is because it hasn't been supplied to us by services. That's a separate piece of work we're working on internally. With regards to some of those temporary accommodation cost ones and stuff like that, we think we've worked out a way forward there so that we'll be able to bring that more frequently here, because at the moment it's just something which is lagging slightly behind just because of some of the processes we've got. But look, change those processes, so moving forwards there should be less blank ones in there. They should be more up to date, but yeah. In summary, I'll send out the email for demand, and I appreciate all your points. We'll deal with that ahead of Q1.
Thank you. Members, any further comments or questions on this report? Councillor Monument.
Apologies. I'm not sure which page it was on, but the reference to temporary accommodation. I noticed the little figure. Page 18. The little figure in there, I think, was 141 days. Average length of stay in temporary accommodation. Do we have a target number of days that we would hope people would not have to exceed? Because that sounds quite a high figure. It might be that that's what people need. It might be that we're aiming to have it at half that, or we have no goal at all. But I'd like to know what we're aiming at.
So, in terms of this one specifically here, there isn't a target on it, because we would count this as a statistic, because broadly speaking, it's outside of the council's control as to how long people stay there. However, I would say it is important that we do some work around what the benchmark should be for that. So understanding, this is obviously average length for Q2. It'd be interesting to look back at historic data and understand both previous stuff and forecasting the future. what that's likely to be, because obviously that does have a financial impact on the organisation. But appreciate your point. We'll look into that for Q1, and I can bring that as part of the report.
Councillor Webb.
Can I just add as well, carefully, that because I had housing as a portfolio in the past, every individual that comes for temporary accommodation is different. Sometimes it's easy to find a place for them, a home for them in the future. Sometimes it's not. And I know the team do their best to find not just a temporary home that they'll move to for 6 months, a proper home where they can actually settle. So I think, you know, this shows that we're not just pushing people into boxes, we're actually taking time and trouble to find the right one. They have children that go to schools. There's lots of reasons why perhaps they want to stay in the locality, which makes it difficult if they want to live in Durham, Watton, and how would they get their children backwards and forwards and changing the schools. All that side of things sometimes makes it challenging to find the right house for the right family. And that's all I wanted to say. It's not just like you could just pop them in different places. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, the recommendation is to note the report. Are you happy to do that? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we now move on to page 30 of your agendas, which is the Internal Audit Progress and Follow-up Report. So, Teresa, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. So this is our progress report for the 12th of June to the end of November. There's been one audit added to the audit plan, the licensing review, which is taking place kind of late Q3 into Q4. There's 85 days completed of audit work so far, which is just under 50% of the plan. And there's been one final report issued in the period for the Breckland Bridge, which had a reasonable assurance and one important recommendation. I will just give you another verbal update because a couple of other reports have been finalised in the last week or so. One was for the service desk, which has a reasonable assurance level. The other one was elections, and that has a substantial assurance level. And the data maturity and AI audit has been issued in a draft position statement. So you're probably getting towards 55% now of your plan completed. You've got the executive summary for the Breckland Bridge, Appendix 2, for you to see the details of that one. In terms of outstanding recommendations, you've got 9 outstanding, 2 are urgent, 3 are important, and 4 needs attention. 20 are not yet due for implementation. And you've got all the details in Appendix 3, 4, and 5. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, excuse me. Members, over to you. David.
Thank you, Chair. Could I possibly ask for a definition of reasonable in regards to Breckland Bridge? I mean, in terms of the audit process, which I'm not particularly familiar with, where does reasonable stand? And in the other point about Breckland Bridge, personally, yes, I would like to see a full copy, please. As you've said, that can be requested by members. It's always a concern when we have a joint enterprise with somebody else. Whilst we're, on other aspects, we're in kind of total control ourselves, but in terms of some of the joint enterprises, I think it's important that we satisfy ourselves that everything is. But anyway, definition of reasonable. Thank you.
I'll get a full copy sent over to you, no problems with that. So on page 33, you've got the definitions of the assurance levels we give. So substantial is the top one, and then you have reasonable. So, you know, that's basically saying controls are quite good, but there are some areas that need to be improved. Limited and then no assurance are obviously the more negative side. So reasonable is in the more positive side. No problems, thank you.
Any further comments? David.
Just on Appendix 5, we've got 4 areas there where we need a revised due date included. The due date has been and gone for those areas. in August, September and October this year, but we haven't yet got a revised due date. Is that something that's going to be available shortly for us?
I mean, I would hope so. Probably look towards officers for some help on this one. We do need to get some updates for these and new dates agreed. Obviously, when we pull the report together, I go on the system and hopefully the updates are there and done. There's a small period of time to try and chase, but yes, we certainly can try and get this done. Don't know if anybody else wants to add. Thank you.
I think as a matter of policy, I think that the committee would probably like to see a new revised date agreed within, say, 4 weeks of the old date being expired. Now, I'm not saying that the new date has to be within those 4 weeks, but I think it's a good idea to have a conversation about what the new date will be. So I would recommend that there's a 4-week grace period, and then we would expect to see a revised date agreed within those 4 weeks. And I look to the committee. Would you be happy to support that? So, Teresa, maybe we, for next time, we can look forward to seeing those dates. How about that? And we can make the system more widely known that it's something that the committee would like to see. I notice none of them have been pushed yet, so that is the first time. So, okay, I think that's... and I understand that there's nearly resolution on the waste management one. So I think we'll leave that till next time as well. Robert?
Does 4 weeks reflect the sort of day-to-day cycle of internal audit talking to accounts, or I mean, is how often do you sort of work with the officers and look at deadlines?
I don't know what my previous person did, and I've obviously only in about my 7th or 8th week, so we've not got a process in place. So I probably need to try and sort that out with Alison and the team to try and work something out. But yes, we can put some sort of process in. Potentially maybe they can have access to the system and we can sort out how that can work between us, because for this time I gave them a date for them to get the updates done so that I could do the progress report. But in my short time of being here, I've had several to do and to get on top of lots of different things, so I haven't put any sort of process in place at the moment.
Yeah, I was just trying to establish whether 4 weeks was the appropriate time window for review. For instance, if they met every 6 weeks, then go for 6 weeks. But we'll perhaps get some feedback on that at the next meeting.
Fine. Any other comments? No? Right. Well, our recommendation is that members review the internal audit update report covering the internal audit plan 23-24 and outstanding internal audit recommendations. Is everybody happy that that's what we've achieved this morning? Thank you. Great. Lovely. Thanks very much. Okay. Thank you very much, Teresa, and very nice to meet you properly. Item 11, Treasury Management Mid-Year Report. Matthew, over to you, sir.
Just to quickly summarise the report, it shows that we had assets under management of just under 29 million as at the end of September, and in terms of our cash investments, we're making a rate of return of 5.45%. Obviously, that's due to the increases in interest rates and very active management of our cash investments. The benchmark that we use is sterling overnight rate, which was 5.19% for that period. So we are doing better than the benchmark, and that's reflected in the fact that we're expecting to overachieve on on interest income by the end of the year by something in the region of £250,000 on the budget. Really, it's kind of good for members if you've got any questions on the.
So, David, you faded away a bit.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just leave it for members if they have any questions on the report.
Members, over to you. Robert.
Yeah, I think in last year's accounts, the overachieving on interest rates substantially offset the overspend on the temporary housing provisions. What is the relative figure overall this year against budget?
I say in terms of interest, we're expecting to be about 250,000 better than budget in terms of interest.
So budget and benchmark are effectively the same thing in this context.
The budget is in terms of the kind of cash terms. The benchmark is a percentage of what the rate of return is on our investments. So like I said, the sterling overnight rate, which we use as a benchmark, comes up with a rate of return of 5.19%. Actually, in terms of our investments, our rate of return that we're getting on our investments is 5.45%. So it's a little bit better than the benchmark.
Thank you. Members, and I'm going to take members of the committee, and Councillor Attwell's indicated to speak, but I'll take members of the committee first. No? Councillor Attwell.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just refer to page 56 of Appendix A, item 6.4. You're saying in there that there's a total Treasury investment by the Council increased from 24.666 million to 27.775 million, owing to one-off grants received for expenditure later in the year. Could you tell me what each of those grants are, please? How much were they, and when did we receive them?
The largest of those grants will be around the Shared Prosperity Fund and the Rural Prosperity Fund, where we've received the grant in September, and obviously there are plans in place to spend that in the course of the next 6 months. So that's the largest one. Comes to, I think, 650,000. There will be others, and I need to go back and give you a full list.
So the Rural Prosperity Fund, we've invested the receipt that we've had from government for that money, and is that in some kind of investment where we've got to leave it in there for a certain amount of time before we can have it, or is it an instant access thing? The reason I ask is I've had criticism in my ward from businesses to say that Breckland has been extremely slow in sorting out a suitable scheme for the Rural Prosperity Fund, so that they can get their hands on funds for things that they need for their businesses. And I'm just concerned that we may have invested it in the hope that we make interest, which I understand. Can you clarify that?
It wouldn't work like that. We would make the money available from the grant as soon as it was needed by the service. When we manage our cash, we manage it at an overall level. We make sure that we have enough funds so that when services need to give grants to businesses, that the money is there immediately. So that certainly wouldn't be a treasury management issue in terms of making those funds available. We don't specifically put say the money we got from the rural prosperity grant, we wouldn't specifically earmark that and put that away for a year. We just wouldn't do that. That's not how we run the treasury management operation.
I mean, the report does say that the council requires at least 5 million to be available within a week's notice. So we do hold a liquid short-term deposits as part of our treasury management strategy that we agree each year. Please.
So I'd come back on that. I'd be grateful if you could write to me and let me know what each of these grants are, please, when we receive them. And also, could I just turn your attention to page 58, which is the Treasury investments held as at the 30th of September. It would be incredibly useful, I think, if we had an additional column in there beside each of these investments so that we could see what the return is in terms of the interest rate for each of those investments. I understand that you have you're looking at an overall rate as a council, what we're looking at as a yield, but I think it would be useful if we had that information, and I'd be grateful if somebody could forward that to me as well so I could see what we're receiving on each of those investments. Thank you.
Any further questions on the Councillor Kuiper?
Just for clarification, does fixed term mean fixed rate, or is it fixed term variable rate? Or, I mean, that's the sort of information that is needed to clarify what return you're going to get on individual investments.
So fixed term means it's fixed for a certain length of time. We can't recall the money until the end of that period, but it does mean that the rate also is fixed for that period, so we're certain of how much interest we'll get on that particular investment.
And they will be different, because the earlier the fixed term deposit was taken out, the lower the interest will be, because the interest rates have moved up over time, haven't they? So there will be a portfolio of different levels depending on how early they were taken. Would that be fair?
Yes. So those that we took out earlier on in the year will generally be lower than ones we deposited later in the year, and also deposits where we're putting the money away for 12 months. Generally, we would get a higher rate of interest than ones that we were putting away for 6 months or 3 months.
So our overall performance, as we were discussing, is higher than the benchmark. So the team is outperforming the benchmark. So we know that we are getting a good service from the Treasury Management team. Councillor Clark.
It's really just a comment, Chairman, rather than a question. I just noticed going through the link report about some interest rate, future interest rates, etc., and this refers back to the contribution that Councillor Attwell made earlier. They do refer in there, I just noted in one of their lines there about risk is around the geopolitical environment, Ukraine, the Middle East, etc. So they're commenting there on the stability or otherwise of where those investments are, as opposed to how those regimes operate internally. But it is quite clearly something that organisations, society broadly can have, can take account of if they choose to. So I'll simply make that comment and observation, Chairman. Thank you.
I mean, traditionally we've had a very, what I would call safe or secure investment strategy here. We have not encouraged investment in emerging markets or investments that are not, as it were, copper-bottomed, I think. So I think that has been the opinion of this committee and also endorsed by Council. We've had a very conservative investment strategy for a number of reasons, and I think I would suggest that we're probably not exposed unduly, though I don't think anybody is immune from a global issues at the moment. But I'd say the global situation looks more fragile now than it has done for a number of years, for all of the reasons that Councillor Clark outlined. Matthew.
Just to add to that, in terms of the policy that members have agreed, that we won't invest in a country where the sovereign rating is less than AA minus, and on our list there's only about 15 countries in the world that are actually we would deem to be safe to invest. But obviously we keep that under review, and if their sovereign rating changes, then we would immediately review those investments.
Okay, so David.
In question, in terms of security, I do notice that our loan to Breckland Bridge in the 6 months from March to September more than doubled to 1.9 million loan. What is our security behind that particular loan?
So the increase in the loan relates to the construction of homes at Colkirk. So the expectation is that the development of those homes at Colkirk will repay the loan once those homes are sold. That's the model that we've worked with Breckland Bridge over a number of years.
And that is part of the business plan. So it's not an unexpected increase, because they aren't going to be able to deliver the assets that we will ultimately benefit from selling unless we put the money into the project in order to deliver them. And I see on that line that the loans to Breckland Bridge are generating an average yield of 8.9%, which is a really healthy return to the council. Any further questions or comments on the Treasury Management mid-year report? So I'm going to go to the recommendations. To note the actual prudential indicators for April to September 2023 within the report. To note the Treasury Management mid-year report for 23-24 at Appendix A of the report. All in favour? Anyone against? No. Lovely. Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 12, the work programme on page 67 of your agendas. Okay, is there anything anybody wants to add? Councillor Kybird.
It says 8th of February 2024 and then date to be confirmed. So can that be clarified, please?
That's under agenda item 13.
Matthew, and then Alison, and then Teresa.
Just to say, we should add the Treasury Management policy and strategy for 24-25 will come to this committee in February, as we previously discussed, so that needs to go on.
Okay, and Julie, you'll add that, yeah? Alison.
We're also going to add on there, if it's okay, an update from EY on the status of national and local audits that they can bring back for us then.
Okay. Thank you. Are we happy with that? Well, actually, before I come to you, Teresa, I've got Harry and I've got Robert.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question on the work programme. This might be for Alison or for Ryan. On 8th of February, we've got Q4 strategic risk reports. I suppose those are obviously the risks currently then to the council. How far ahead are you going to be? Are you going to be looking ahead at all to the year 24-25 at all, or simply just looking back to where we are at that particular point in time? Because some risks will be greater or lesser going into the new financial year, I suggest.
So that report will write in January to bring in February. What I'm happy to do within that report is talk about what we foresee coming forward, because a lot of these risks have April target dates on them. Realistically, a lot of them are going to have April 25 target dates on them, because there'll still be strategic issues over the next 12 months. But I'm happy to say what I think is going to happen over the next 12 months in terms of the risk landscape, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Robert.
On the matter of EY's programme, I did attend a a Teams meeting of the regional audit chairs, and I think Bill and I have both received the report from that meeting. But just to say that we are well ahead of the pack on that, and some councils are 3 years behind. Thank you.
Yes, some Norfolk authorities are a long way behind, and I have to say that compared to a lot of authorities across the country, Breckland is almost unique in that we are up to date and we have no external borrowing, which is a very rare thing indeed. So perhaps this is a good moment to say congratulations to the team on running such a tight ship. So, Teresa, you indicated.
Thanks. I think we're going to bring our annual internal audit plan and strategic plan to the February meeting as well.
Okay, so we're going to have quite a busy meeting then in
Yeah.
February. Okay, right, everybody. Thank you for that. Are you okay with Julie? You've got all of that. Okay, so anything more on the work programme? Item 12. Okay, item 13, next meeting. It is proposed that we have it on the 8th of February, 2024. Are members happy to agree that we do that? Lovely, thank you. And with that, oh yes, I've got one further point. Actually, no, I'm going to dismiss that. Right, I've now formally closed the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance. Thank you.